Okay, I think you can hear me. Audio should be working. Let's get the music set up. Not hearing it yet. Okay, hopefully it'll start in a second. You know what? It might be muted. There we go. There we go. Let me start it again. I like this. I like to hear the beginning part of the music. There we go. There we go. Okay. Now let me tell the Discord crew I am online. How's everyone doing today? This is a surprise stream. I did not plan on streaming early in the morning, but I just got the fire in me and wanted to do it. Let me clear up a few things here. I've got, as always, I have a lot of equipment in front of me. So today's topic is IAF, Initial Activation Force. And let me tell you why I wanted to do it. So I talk about IAF a lot, and on the weekend, I saw someone post on one of the subreddits, the tablet subreddits. Oops. Some people are saying the image does not look good, but I haven't changed any settings. Let me double check. And let's see. Looks like people are seeing the stream in very low quality. So let me just take a quick look. Some people are saying the image does not look good. But I haven't changed any settings. Let me double check. And let's see. Looks like people are seeing the stream in very low quality. Yeah, it does not look quite as good as normal, though I don't know what's causing it, because I have not changed any settings. So I'm gonna stick with it. This isn't supposed to be a, I'm not showing anything in great detail. I'm not showing, so I don't think you need any high resolution. I think this will be fine. Maybe it's just a YouTube thing. I'm not sure. It's not a bandwidth thing. I'm connected. Let me double check on that actually. Network, Wi-Fi. I am connected on the local network. Let's just double check. Network. Yeah, I am connected via Ethernet. We'll see how this develops. And people are saying it's buffery. I may have to restart the stream, but let's see. I'll give it a minute just to figure out what's going on. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to take a look at the settings. Now I use Ecamm Live. Did any settings change? I don't think they did. Yeah, stream size, high quality video. Yeah, the settings are set correctly. Okay, if I need to restart, I'll restart. But I don't think we need to. But I do apologize for if you're seeing a buffering or low quality stream. I'm not sure what would explain that. Because I have not changed any settings, guaranteed. So, yeah, on the weekend I saw a post on one of the drawing tablet subreddits, and it was about IAF. And despite the fact I talk about IAF, it's in a lot of my videos. Certainly, I mention it in a lot of my streams. I write a lot about it and all the different aspects that go into IAF. I don't think I've really comprehensively talked about the topic. There's actually a lot of things about the topic that I want to share and get out to all of you. So I thought I'd build upon that question that was asked, and I did answer the question, which was, I had a very long answer. And it made me realize that's the first time I've put everything together. So we're going to start there. I'll show you the original question, and I'll show you what I wrote. And then I actually did write a doc, and I'm not going to read the doc, sort of, just start reading it out loud. But what I will do is I use it as a guideline to discuss the topics. And the reason I want to do this live is probably some of you have feedback and experiences you want to share, because this is I will say this, for a lot of things, the deeper I get into any specific topic in drawing tablets, the more I realize that in fact there's just more mysteries to uncover. There's less black and white. There's just much more nuance and shades of gray. And IF is one of those things. It is not a topic that is just one thing. There's lots of considerations. Let's see. Eddie Valros, good to see you. Nick Tyler, use the force, Luke. Nick Tyler says, I cached the start once. Video's not terrible. Compression visible, not terrible. Okay, yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm seeing, Nick. It doesn't look awful, but I'm definitely seeing some compression artifacts. Let me know if anything changes, because I don't think it's the network. I do believe it's probably YouTube doing something. I haven't changed anything. Okay. First, let me try to find the post from Reddit. And give me a second. And we'll talk about, as always, whatever people want to talk about. But IAF is really the primary topic. There hasn't been a lot of tablet news. The only other thing of interest is, we think we saw some page from Huion in early March. Someone forwarded the link to Amazon, I believe, and there was an early listing, probably too early, of the Huion Canvas 22 Gen 3. And there the release date was given as early March, like March 6th, March 7th. Philip, hey, good to see you, Philip. Good to see you. Minecraft 7 pets. Is that what it looks like? Really blocky? So that's the big thing I'm waiting for. As soon as it becomes available, which I assume is going to be in early March, we are going to... we're going to start... I'll order it immediately. It'll take a week or two to arrive, presumably. And the second I get it, I'll go live. We'll start taking your questions and evaluating it. Max gram force of the pen, unknown to me. Yeah, we'll talk about max pressure a little bit as well. Actually, Ben released their first X4 chip, Eddie Valra says, which I do have. They claim it has 2-gram force IAF. We'll discuss that. So yeah, the theme of this video is to give you everything I know. It's what we would call back at Microsoft a brain dump. But don't interpret this as a lecture. This is a discussion of back and forth. We're going to learn from each other, because it is through our interaction as a community we're able to understand things better. Okay? So, okay, let me find the Reddit page. By the way, I put on the jacket to make it look a little more formal. Also, I'm just a little cold. Let's see, where is it? Reddit. And I'm trying to find my response. YouTube decided you're looking too good, so they lowered video quality just so other streamers would not be jealous. Well, that's a good theory. I like that one. I will say, in complete honesty, I mentioned this many times, or at least a couple of times in the past month or two. I have lost quite a bit of weight. Okay, so I have to be completely honest with you. Because in front of me is a teleprompter, so I see a video of what you see, and like I'm looking at the camera, and I'm really happy with the progress I've made. And that's one thing I told my nutritionist. I said, with your other clients, you may be unsure how much progress they're making. They may be unsure with how much progress they're making in getting healthier and losing weight. And I told her that I stream like almost every week. So I have a week by week log of what I look like. And I showed in my last stream or the one before that, I showed a comparison of me in December 2024 and me a couple of weeks ago. It's a huge difference. Now, just to remind everyone, I'm not done. I'm really just at the halfway point, maybe not even quite the halfway point. So lots more to go to. But yeah, I'm looking good, at least relative to the way I used to look. So I'm very happy. I'm very happy. I gotta tell you, I'm so happy with it. I'm often just looking at myself in the mirror in the bathroom because I'm so happy with the progress. But again, I'm not halfway even there to where I need to get to. Mihao Patrick asking the direct questions. How much do I weigh right now? Give me a second, because I want to give you the non-American answer in kilograms. 2 kilograms. Okay, so today I weighed myself this morning, and actually I'm giving you a slightly higher weight than my actual weight, just to account for dehydration. I am in imperial units, 230 pounds. So that's 104.3 kilograms. Okay. In December 2024, no, I've never told you my weight back then, so you'll understand. Let's see. I was 285 pounds, which you could have seen my face. And that was 129.3 kilograms, right? So that's quite a bit. So in pounds, how much did I lose? I lost 55 pounds, which is 24.9 kilograms, okay? And I've got a lot more to go to. If you want to hear my target weight, I'll tell you. Give me a second. My target weight, this is a little bit of a stretch goal, and it's actually it's going to be a little too thin, to be quite honest. It's 150 pounds. Okay? I've never been that low. I've been in the 150s before, but I've never been 150 pounds. Lowest I ever got was 158. but I have always wondered what it would be like if I was like super thin. So I'm going to see what I look like at 150 pounds. That is 68 kilograms. That's it. Yeah. And it's slow going. I'm not going to pretend that it's happened fast. You've seen it happen, and probably no one even noticed. In fact, I didn't notice. I'll give you an example. Sorry, this has become a nutrition channel all of a sudden. This jacket did not. Let me unbutton it for a second. I used to wear this jacket sometimes. I could never button it, and now I can actually fold it over a little bit. Right? It's not obvious. I'm 6 feet tall, Chris Foxart. I'm 6 feet tall. But yeah, you know, one of my friends is the same height as me. This is a couple years ago, and he was like 140 something. And I was like, you know, I wonder what I would look like at his weight. And that was 165 when I saw that. And I'm like, man, I wonder what I'd look like really thin. So that's my stretch goal, is to get 150 or even slightly below. We'll see. I don't know if that's a healthy weight for me. Well, I don't think I'm naturally a huge person. Like I just don't have one of those bodies which becomes super like big. Though I am I keep my muscle quite a bit, very well. But yeah, I want to just do it. And it's, you know, I'm not trying to rush either, right? Just got to transfer the calories to muscles. I will say one thing, now that we're doing my nutrition segment again. As I got heavier, which happened, as you know, it can happen very fast. I used to play hockey 3 times a week, and then go to the gym 2 or 3 times on top of that, and then do yoga once a week. I used to be very active, and as I got heavier, my desire to be active and move really diminished, right? And so it's been hard to stay active. I will say, as I've lost the weight, my desire to move, that is, even take a walk or exercise more, or, you know, do a push-up, whatever, has really increased, because it does feel good when you exercise your body, when you exert yourself. Yeah, Mihao, it might be a little low. It might be a little low for me. So I'm not sure, you know, if it's the right thing, but I'm curious what it would look like. I remember seeing height weight charts for men in the 1950s, and I think the middle range for a man 6 feet tall was 160 pounds. Right? Now I know that our sense of what's the correct weight is very different these days, but I'm always curious what it would look like at that target weight from the 1950s. At least that was some published weight charts. Who knows if they were accurate or healthy? Okay. Let's see. It's about IAF. And here I am again talking about my weight. Okay, hang on. Where's that chat window? Oops, it all disappeared. I must have accidentally closed it. There we go. Chris Foxart, I'm 5'6", around 150 pounds, which is a little overweight. Got it. Just don't go with BMI. It's not useful if you work out. Got it. Got it. Yeah, I have not figured out BMI numbers. One thing I'm really excited. Sorry, I'm going to just keep on talking about this. One thing I'm really excited about is when I was about 160, 170, I bought a very nice Dolce & Gabbana suit, which obviously will not fit me right now. And I'm just going to tell you up front, I look really good in that suit. Like, no joke. I look very good in that suit. I can find a picture if you want. And I really want to fit back into that suit and, you know, go to a Christmas party or something. Okay, I'm ignoring everything. I'm ignoring the topic. So let's get back on topic. IAF. Oh, by the way, thank you everyone for joining me. You know, I do love chatting with you all. Is there anything else I want to talk about this session? Yeah, I want to talk about some AI coding, probably. Some things I've been doing, which are related to drawing tablets, by the way. And I guess there could be some. I think I had maybe some thoughts I have to share about Windows/Linux. I'd like to share a few thoughts there. We'll see, but we'll stick to IAF for right now. Okay, hang on a second. I'm finding out my. Oh, come on. Comments. Yeah, I'm trying to find my comments. Yes. I found it. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna share my screen. So this is on Reddit. So I'm gonna zoom this in a little bit. I wish in Reddit, can I hide this column? Okay, I guess I have to read it like this. Okay, so there's a user, AAA30, who posted 2 days ago on the XP Pen subreddit. And I'll just paraphrase what Arya is saying. Want to share something that I wish I knew before buying my first pen display, and honestly, it's my fault for not searching properly. Everyone talks about 8,000 pressure levels, tilt support, color accuracy, laminate screen, but almost nobody talks about IAF. I talk about IAF. IAF is basically how much pressure you need to apply before the pen even starts registering a stroke. And it's usually measured in gram. It's written as grams force, but it should say gram force. And it should be not G, but GF. Oh, Mir, good to see you. Krita 5.3 Beta 2 is out. Stabilization got a new feature. I'll take a look at it. I actually tried to clone the Krita repo and build it. Super complicated. I need to try again. Could not get a build on Fedora working. Nick Tyler says, do Huion XP Pen owners do the same pressure curve thing as Wakamians? We should call ourselves Wakopians, don't you think? Curving down to get better control over pressure levels at the cost of IAF. Well, let's talk about that. So first of all, if you're curving down, which I think is my recommendation, by the way, for all tablets, at least a little bit, curving down doesn't change your IAF. Changing the lower left part of the curve does, and I'll actually talk about that. It's actually it's in my notes. Miha says, if you need help with building Krita, you can hit me up. I have been there. Oh, that's right. I forgot. You actually you actually had a patch for Krita. Yeah, I was super shocked at how hard it was. Like, I read and tried, and I could not figure out what was going on. You know, I live in the world of like clone it, run some build script and it just works. It was not like that. Okay, back to this post. High IAF. Light strokes don't register easily. Shading feels inconsistent. Your hand gets tired or cramped during long drawing sessions. And there's in bold here, avoid XP Pen with older generations, specifically below year 2020. Oh, hey, Rain, good to see you. Congratulations on your weight loss. It really looks really good. I especially noticed because I watched all the old streams. Instant Pen display only has half the pressure levels TOF. I vaguely recall something about Instant Pen display. I don't remember who said that. I've got to check that one out. So we, well, technically no, but curving down, you must push harder. Well, technically, yes. I just want to tease apart the activation part. But you're right, you have to push harder to get the same effect. But remember, pens, I've measured 70 pens. All of them basically, almost except with like one or two, which are older pens, they are over responsive at low pressure. In fact, if you press just a little bit, they're giving you back much bigger values than you'd expect. So you got to calm them down with those curves. I just got one of those little Huion Inspiroi tablets a few weeks ago, and I'm pretty impressed with the pen's IAF. And I'm a Wacom Intuos Pro guy. Yeah, and this actually is a topic which is interesting because the Pro pens really have lower IAF, but as you're gonna see in this video, in this discussion, that, and I'm gonna say it here, but it may not make sense until I get there later. The way you and I, all of us, hold a pen naturally will most often not let us get that super low IAF, even with a Wacom pen. Okay? And it doesn't mean it doesn't matter, but you need to realize there are some factors which affect what you perceive as the IAF. And so I do believe for some people, I'm like this, Chris Foxhart, I'm actually pretty good. I'm actually okay with the Huion pens, even though technically the Wacom pens have a lower IAF. Horu, I thought you recommend curving up for Huion. Oh, so I should be clear what curving, because it can be, the language is different. So when I say curving down, so here's a linear curve, right? Like this. I mean going flat and then moving up, right? So you're curving down is what I call this. It's confusing because you're actually you are eventually curving up, right? Versus doing this where you're rising suddenly and then tipping over, okay? So I hope that clarifies it, Horu. If you want a more linear one, you have to go, here's linear. If you want an actual linear pressure response, instead of going straight, you have to go across, then up. So over, then up, instead of up, then over. And I can draw this out a little bit. Okay, next. And lower IF registers very light strokes, feels more natural, easier on your hand for long drawing sessions, reduces cramps and fatigue. And I'm going to say it up front, there's some minor technical quibbles of what's being used here, like it's gram force and GF, not grams force. But everything that this person writes here is accurate, and I 100% agree with everything they're saying. No, I understand that. Curving down, easier. Yeah, if you're curving up than over, then the pen will be more responsive. But it also means your pressure gets out of control. It's hard to control the pressure. When you curve it over than up, you're actually giving yourself more control and less variation. And I can show you that. I'll demonstrate that. Because I do talk about curves. Okay, so I wrote a huge reply. I said, thanks so much for sharing. I love when people share their experiences and their conclusions, right? And I do certainly wish more people understood IAF. Now, you will see that I think it's probably not totally fair to say no one talks about IAF. Certainly I talk about IAF. Brad Colbo talks about IAF, though he calls it initial activation rate, which, I don't think is the correct term. TO and Tech talks about IAF, okay? I don't think many people talk about it, so that is fair, right? Meow says using curve down with Pro Pen 2 is hard because how much you need to press down. Remember, you don't need to get an extreme curve. I'm just talking even just try a slight one, right? And remember, inside an app, you get really a lot of control. You can shape the curves quite differently. They don't have to be consistently curved. They can sort of be curving a little bit less here. They can, well, it's hard to explain. Basically, they'll go over a little bit, then do a normal linear ramp, right? The point is not the shape of the curve. The point is to give you control at lower pressure. And there are other techniques you can use, by the way, like pressure smoothing, which is an application setting. Let's say Krita and Rebel. So instead of reading for you all these things, I'm gonna take this page and move it to the left. I actually wrote a document on my document website. So I'm going to where did I write it? Where did I write it? Ah, it's in a Word doc. It's in a Word, so it's not published yet. That's okay. I'll show you the Word doc. Give me a second. Tell me what you mean by, or what's interesting. What do you mean by it feels like there's less control? Because you should actually feel like you have more. But I can understand why someone might say what you're saying. So if you could elaborate what it means. Okay, let me find the Word doc. Give me a second. It's on my Synology drive. If I curve down, when I draw, pressure instantly jumps from low to relatively high. See, that's interesting because that's exactly what's not supposed to happen. That's the exact problem I'm trying to fix. So it's curious that you're getting it. I will demo this and we'll see if we can determine what's going on. Because I do want to show you what I experience, which is what you're supposed to be experiencing. And there's some, we'll see. Okay, so give me a second. Let me get to work. Yes, IAF Ramblings. This document is called IAF Ramblings. Oh, I can't believe this stupid thing. Okay. Actually, you know what? Let me open it up in the web. So this is written as a script, okay? Meaning I'm gonna make a YouTube video about it, not just this live stream. So you're actually seeing the script, right? So we're gonna follow this. I'm gonna go through it. So yeah, again, so you have to understand this is what I'm supposed to be saying during the video. So I'm gonna use this as a guide to talk about the topic, okay? And I'll annotate it with questions here. So let's talk about the very first topic that's introduced in Arya's post, which is modern pressure levels. And one of the points in the post is people are always talking about pressure levels. And I do want to stress this point. Pressure levels are overhyped, right? And there's multiple reasons for this. I think it's kind of easy to understand pressure levels at some level. Also, we all understand that more, numbers that are bigger are better, right? There's that inherent bias we have. But in truth, you don't need a lot of pressure levels. And I'm just gonna say it again, you need about 2,000 pressure levels. And honestly, you can get by with way less. And I have evidence that shows this, okay? And if anyone wants to offer counter evidence, especially where you've measured it, I'd love to see it. But I think you need 2,000. And the implication of this statement is, if you're trying to buy a tablet, you don't need to worry about the number of pressure levels, okay? You really don't. If you're buying any tablet made in the last 10 years, or maybe even a bit more than that, you don't need to worry about the number of pressure levels at all. Every tablet will be good enough for you. If you look at the market now, it's been this way for a while. Something like, I'm making up the number, 99% of tablets have 8,000 pressure levels, which is 4 times what I say you need. Only a few of them have 4,000, and those are some old Wacom tablets from 2019. And the other few have 16,000, which is totally, you don't need 16,000 is just marketing, okay? So definitely I agree with the statement, and I want to emphasize it as much as I can. Pressure levels are overhyped. You don't need to worry about them. I'm not saying they don't matter. What I'm saying is every tablet on the market has more than you need. So you don't need to stress about it, okay? If you were back in 1995 and you had to deal with the tablets back then, yeah, it was an issue, right? Because back then in 1995, you had tablets that had, the maximum pressure levels was 256. And so, yeah, it made a difference back then in 1995, maybe into the year 2000, but it hasn't made a difference in over 20, I think over 20 years, okay? Or at least 10. So keep that in mind, okay? So I did want to mention that before I get to the real topic of IAF. Okay. So I mentioned Brad and Tio, yeah, they talk about IAF. And I want to give you more insight into what IAF is and how to think about it and some things I've learned. And I'm going to tell you, there are things I have learned which I've not covered in some of these older videos or streams. So that's why I wanted to have this stream where we cover everything. So one person I want to mention is tablet expert Cube. This was written through voice dictation. So I said Cube, but it translated, of course, as C-U-B-E. Now, IAF is really hard to measure. Let me give you how I can, I have equipment to measure it, but for me, low IAF is extremely hard to measure in a pen. I can really measure IAF pretty effectively around 2, maybe 2, but basically 3 gram force and above, okay? When you get less than that, it's super hard for me to make measurements. I can measure, but I get unreliable measurements if I measure the same pen over and over. The only person I know who's able to do this effectively well is Cube, okay? And he's a very careful measurer with the pens that he has. Now, he doesn't have like 10 of each pen. He has 1 or 2. So, we also want to get measurements statistically. We want to have like 10 pens and measure them of the same unit. But I'm not there yet. Now, I think what's stopping me is I need better equipment. Equipment means my scale and my apparatus, okay, which is a kind of a lever, right? I need a way to hold the pressure consistently. And again, my equipment's very good. It's very good, but at very low IAF, it's very hard to measure, okay? Chris Fox Art says, why do you think manufacturers pull advertising pressure levels so much if artists only really care about IF? There's 2 things going on here. Number one is, and this is, pressure levels are intuitively easy to understand. Like, again, more is better. And it is easy to synthesize more pressure levels, okay? You can easily do it. The tablet, with the same pen hardware, the tablet firmware can say, oh yeah, I'm going to divide the pressure I sense into arbitrary units. Trust me, at some point, someone's going to advertise 32,000 pressure levels, right? Maybe they'll advertise 64,000 pressure levels or 128,000. It's going to happen one day because it's easy for the hardware to start interpolating the signal it's getting from the pen. It's easy. So because it's an easily tweaked number and more is always better, it's always something people can point at with pride and say, hey, we support more. We support a bigger number. So there's naturally an inclination for people to advertise that way. One of the biggest signals you can get that the number of pressure levels is not as important as people think is the latest Wacom tablets. Actually, for quite a while now, Wacom has been at 8,000 pressure levels. Other companies are saying 16,000. Wacom hasn't bothered even to do that. They're just like, we're at 8,000. And I think 8,000 is more than you need. The second thing, part of your question, Chris Fox Art, is if artists only really care about IAF. And so this is another thing that I noticed. IAF is not a topic that is well known to artists. Some artists sense it, like they intuitively, if you were to ask them how their pen felt while they're drawing, they'd probably say things like, well, my pen felt more responsive. Or they'll probably even say like, oh, I could draw with lighter strokes. But they did not grow up, so to speak, in an environment where people talked about IAF. And so if that term and that concept is not brought forth to your mind, you're not going to talk about it, and you're not going to ask if you have to talk to Huion or XP Pen or Wacom, you're not going to ask, what about the IAF? Okay? So you're just not habituated for that term. That's one of my responsibilities, I think. My personal commitment to you is to try to teach, get these concepts out to the community. So you can start talking with each other with IAF and start talking to Huion and tell them, or whoever, well, I'm not going to buy this tablet because the pen it comes with does not have a low enough IAF, right? You have to be able to explain that to Huion, right? Or to whoever. I don't want to pick on Huion. Because even some Wacom pens have very high IAF. We'll talk about those. The other thing, which is why I don't think drawing tablet manufacturers have talked about IAF, is it is difficult to make a pen that has that unit to unit has consistent low IAF. It takes hardware and engineering, and it takes having a repeatable manufacturing process that is, what you might call, it has great control statistically, right? Well, and I'll give you more sense what that means, but not everyone's there yet. It takes effort and money to do that. Wacom has done that with its professional pens. They've spent the money. They've done it for decades. That's new still for Huion. So of course, I think historically people haven't focused on that, and it's taken time, right? So that's one reason why I think they haven't focused on it. But now you're starting to see them focus on it. They'll mention it in the specs. Let's see, a whole bunch of comments. Technically, if we do coloring, most of the time we paint an 8-bit color, which just gives us 256 gradations per channel. And using pressure to brush the size, you never use 10,000 pixels brush to paint one. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Realistically, even transparency is only really 256, or even 1024. It's 10-bit transparency, 1024. So like, you can understand there's just very little opportunity for you to see all these levels. Here's another example. Imagine you had to draw a line that used 8,000 pressure levels, right? You just drew a line horizontally somehow, and you wanted you wanted to draw a line that exercised every pressure level, right? Well, just think about this. How many pixels would that line be in order to exercise 8,000 pressure levels? If it's a pure black and white line, the line would have to be 8,000 pixels, right? For you to see that difference. And also the brush width would have to go from 1 to like 8,000. Like, that's just not a realistic scenario, right? So and also there's only 200, when a pen draws, there's only 200 reports per second, maybe 300. So within a second, you can only get 300 different readings, right? So there's kind of a limit to what you can really accomplish. There's a limit to how much resolution, both spatially and temporally, is available for you to, exercise to realize these different pressure levels. Horo says, if you convince people that 16K doesn't matter, they might go buy, let's say, Huion Pentec 3.0 instead of 4.0, and they'll face other issues. This may be enough for them anyways, but yeah, it may be enough. But all newer tablets are improved in many ways. That's right. That's very important, Haru. It's not just IAF. There's so many other things, like maximum physical pressure. That's another thing people forget about. That has even less awareness in the community than IAF. That's something I'm trying to change. People usually don't know all the characteristics. They just look at the most. Yeah, correct. They look at the most advertised ones. Chris Fox art. It's not well known, but definitely sensed like something. Yeah, exactly. A lot of people know it, but they may not have the language to talk about. Many people do not have a lot. When I say they don't have experience, you might have been using a drawing tablet for decades, but you might have used one pen, maybe 2 pens, maybe 3. You probably have not tried 130 different pens and measured them. Not to brag, but I have. That doesn't mean I'm any better at this. My point is, I have some data to back up what I'm saying, and I can point to patterns that wouldn't be obvious if you just tried individually 1 pen or 2 pens or 3 pens. Hey Rev, good. Thanks for joining us. Mihao, you're right. Extra pressure levels are nice for anti-aliasing. And the question is, how much anti-aliasing can you do? Because to anti-aliasing, you're going to be changing the transparency of the borders. And so that's how much transparency you have. You have 8 bits, maybe 10 bits. Yes, you might have situations you have 16K, 16,000 levels, but it's rare, right? You might have 1 pixel brush, but anti-aliasing can still show pressure on this 1 pixel by changing the value. That's true, yeah. Pressure levels has nothing to do with anti-aliasing. Maybe you meant some sort of approximation. I think maybe we're mixing up topics, but let me say it like this, Nick, and I'll try to demonstrate this later if you remind me. Let's say you're drawing a 1 pixel brush, okay? But you have pressure sensitivity on to change the width of the brush. What will actually happen? Well, you can only draw in pixels, right? So you can't get smaller than 1 pixels. So when I'm saying anti-aliasing, what I'm saying is transparency, thus anti-aliasing in this sense, is being used as a way of creating a thinner line. Now, the line is still 1 pixel, but it's very transparent, right? That's what I'm trying to get at. So you have 256 levels of that transparency. And that's why I'm talking about pressure levels mapping to anti-aliasing. Yeah, Patot, just to get the numbers, I have 130 pens and like 107 drawing tablets. So, again, I didn't mean to brag so much. My point is, I just got a lot of data that backs up what I'm saying, right? And I do try to measure things. Am I the most perfect measurer in the world for IAF? No, that's Cube. I'm very good at pressure response curves and max pressure. IAF is still something I'm not good at. Okay, Mihai, you're understanding what I'm getting at. Good. Okay, so manufacturers have started showing IAF, which is great. Manufacturers now know we are paying attention to this number. By the way, Wacom is not there yet. They may have occasionally done it, but by and large they do not mention the IAF of their pens, which I think is a tragedy, right? Because they are the winner. They are the winner. On Reddit, one time I saw someone ask them, and they had Wacom support said I guess they asked the engineering team. They said, "Yeah, we admit. Here's what our IAF is for this pen." Okay. Okay. So this is going to be a little bit of a basic section. This is for people who, just so we're on the same page, right? So again, IAF stands for initial activation force. I know Brad Colbo says initial activation rate. I don't think that's the correct phrase because there is no rate involved. It's a minimum bar for physical force. The other thing is, notice I said physical force, and that means it's a physical measurement. It's the minimum amount of physical pressure to activate the pen. In other words, how much pressure before the pen starts drawing, okay, or clicking. So the moment you hit that threshold, the IAF, then your stroke is starting. You're starting to draw. You're starting to click. Okay. Max Mad, good to see you. Good to see you. Hey Nim, wait till you tell people in Windows that they're likely only using 1024 pressure levels because of Windows 8. So yeah, that's a complicated topic that I don't know. I don't know if people are ready for. I don't know if people are ready for that one. I don't know if we're psychologically ready. It's like if someone told you there's alien life, we found alien life. Or Neo discovers he's in the Matrix, like he opens his eyes and he's in those pods and he's like, where the hell am I? It's that kind of moment. And I want to get more of my facts straight about that topic. But let me, for the audience, just as a teaser, I have a news flash for you. many of the applications you use, this is on Windows, but this is on Windows. This has nothing to do with Mac. Not all, I can't promise it's all, but with at least some, maybe many, of the applications you use on Windows, where you're using Windows Ink, no matter what the tablet supports in hardware, your application is only dealing with 1024 pressure levels. Getting into this topic is complex and not easy to describe, and it requires some more technical investigation because I want to prove this to you. But just to make it concrete, if you are using Krita right now, the very latest version of Krita, and we have confirmed this because people have looked at the source code, at least two people, I think Mihao as well as Knockd in the Discord have looked at the Krita source code. I think Knockd has definitely, I think Mihao may have also confirmed the API they use is 1024 pressure levels, the Windows Ink API that they use. Also, the Krita team themselves have mentioned this. Okay, so I know it's going to come as a surprise for you. You're probably wondering, why don't you notice it? That's because Krita's brush engine does some pressure smoothing, which hides this fact. Now, see, that's my further evidence why you don't need 2000. Because if you've been happy with Windows Ink on Krita, guess what? You've been using 1000 pressure levels all this time. Okay. So Nick, I don't know SB7. I don't know. I will say this about Krita. So, and this is important to the story. That's why we need to get our story straight here. Krita, in the olden days, and I found this on their Krita developer forum. So this is not me saying my guess. This is what they said. In fact, it was the lead Krita maintainer. I forgot her name. She wrote, it used to be Krita had code in Krita that dealt with drawing tablets. Okay. Now, Krita moved eventually, I guess, or it's built on something called Qt. It's spelled QT. I think it's on Qt5 or Qt6. I can't remember. In any case, at some point, Krita trends changed how they work with drawing tablets. They don't do their own thing with drawing tablets. They rely on Qt to do all their drawing tablet interactions, which simplifies Krita's world. Okay, and Qt does this thing with 1024 pressure levels on Windows. So some investigation needs to happen. What are they doing on Linux? I don't know. I just don't know. Okay. Nick Tyler, this gets complicated because I cannot say fairly that Photoshop and Substance Painter use 1K pressure levels. And the reason for that is, and this is, I know we're going so deep in this topic, you and I, we think of, there's an API called Windows Ink. Here's a news flash, which is going to just blow your, this is a topic for another day, but we'll get into it. Let me get my camera here. So you go in the driver, you see that session, that little checkbox that says use Windows Ink. Here's a surprise for you all. There is no API called Windows Ink. It doesn't exist. It just doesn't exist, right? You can search all day at Microsoft MSDN documentation. You will not find an API that is called Windows Ink. You will find features called Windows Ink. Tablets say the phrase Windows Ink. There is no API called Windows Ink. Okay? What does Windows Ink mean when you see it in a application or a driver? You should interpret that phrase as we are not using WinTab. We are not using WinTab. Instead, we are communicating to the tablet or driver or to the app using a Windows API, some Windows tablet API or stylus API, pointer API, whatever. Notice I said some API. There are, Knockd can tell us this for sure. In Windows, there are multiple APIs that all are somehow lumped together under Windows Ink. And again, there is no Windows Ink API. There's the Windows 8 Pointer API. There's the Real-Time Stylus API, which is kind of deprecated now, which is supposed to be super high performance. And I think there's actually 1 or 2 more APIs in Windows to deal with styluses. And some of them, one of them has this 1024K limit, and one of them doesn't. And I don't know which one doesn't. So that's why it's hard to say that Photoshop uses 1024 pressure levels. I know Krita does, because we have lots of confirmation from the Krita developer team, as well as people in our Discord who have looked at the source code. Okay, we're sure of that. Photoshop, we don't know. We don't know their source code, and it's hard to tell if an application is using which API they're using unless they tell you. Okay. But why is the pressure level limited when using Windows Ink? So in the Windows Pointer, actually, you know, I'll just show it to you so that you're totally clear on this. Hang on. I want you to believe what I'm telling you, okay? I want you to know I've done the investigation. People have helped me. So here I'm going to show you something. Okay, this is one of the APIs, which is called the Windows Pointer API, which I have written multiple apps in C, Zig, and with AI help, Rust and Zig, and manually in C# that talk to this API. So I've written sort of test clients that draw with pressure for, you know, or I wrote twice and used AI to implement 2 more. So I have experience on this topic. So when you're talking to the Windows Pointer API, you get the structure back called pointer pen info, okay? And notice there's a uint, which means unsigned int, 32 bits, called for pressure. Sorry, you may not be able to see it, so I'm going to zoom in, okay? Now look what it says. You go down to pressure. A pen pressure is normalized to a range of between 0 and 124. So what that means is, no matter what pressure levels, if it's, you know, if your tablet's saying I've got 8,000, 16,000, for some really unknown reason, the Windows Pointer API, which is one of the things that we refer to when we say Windows Ink, is just converting it instead of 0 to 16,000, 0 to 8,000, it is converting to 0 to 1,024. Why that's true, have no idea. I have no idea, but it is happening for sure. I can guarantee you this. This is accurate. Now again, there are other APIs in Windows that don't have this limitation. I believe Real-Time Stylus may not have this limitation, but it's actually hard to tell what it is doing. I know some apps, Nick says, that can switch between Windows Ink APIs and work in both modes. Good topic. I'll try to. Can you ask me this later, Nick? I will. I do want to talk about it. I want to get back to IAF, but things are affected, but it's not. I think there's most of the time you will not notice it as a user. Okay, if you're a developer, you'll notice, and we'll talk about what that is. Okay, but as a user, you probably will never notice the difference. Okay. Okay. Back to, let's see, where's my document? Okay. So I mentioned this part earlier. We're going back to IAF now. Gram force. So it's a physical measurement, and so gram force is the measurement to use. Okay, which means this is the force exerted by this many grams of material mass. The force exerted by this much mass at standard Earth gravity. By the way, a 1 gram is like a small pinch of salt. Okay, not a big pinch, a small pinch of salt. Okay, so it's not a lot. It's probably more than you think it is, but it's not a lot. Now, manufacturers tend to use the word grams, which is incorrect. okay? Because grams is a mass. So you really, it's not correct to say there's a 3 gram IAF. That would be like saying there's a 3. We can understand what they mean. We're saying that much force is required, okay? So gram force is required. That's why I always use it. But if you see gram, just do the translation in your head. It means the amount of force, not the amount of mass. Yeah, Max Mad, they just decided somehow. I'm pretty sure, I suspect what happens is there's probably some older API. Oh, sorry, not older API. I'm suspecting what happened is when Microsoft was building its tablet PC thing, those older pens only had 124 levels of pressure. So, you can just bet some program manager at Microsoft thought, well, who would ever need more than 1,000 pressure levels? And they just baked that in there, right? To be backward compatible with their older hardware or something. That's probably the reason. Okay, so how do you measure IAF? So I'm going to show you a picture of my, do I have it? I think I do have it, so give me a second. I'm going to show you a picture of how I measure it, just so you know. Oops, where's my... By the way, is everyone enjoying this session? It's going pretty deep, right? Measuring pressure, yeah. Here's a picture. So this is how I measure pressure in general with a pen. Max pressure, IAF, or I try IAF, or anything in between. Let me explain what's going on. There's a scale underneath here. It's a digital scale. Even it says grams, but really it's measuring force, right? So this is reading 288.2 gram force. On top of it is a tablet. That's a Huion, no, this is an XP pen. I think it's a Deco 01V3. And this pen is an XP pen P05 pen. And then here's a foam block. And you don't want to be pressing with your hand. Your hand is not stable enough. Maybe Cube's hand is, mine is not. So I put weight on here, and depending on how much weight, where I put the weight, I can make the pen consistently press down, okay? And of course, critical to all of this is this box, this complete box set of Dragon Ball manga. Critical. This does not work without Dragon Ball manga. You gotta have it here. Okay? Sorry, it's upside down. So this is how I measure, and and there are more complicated ways to do this, but this is how I do it. Hanem says it's part of the evidence why we're no longer getting much benefit from. Yeah, exactly, Hanem. This is part of what's going on, right? Now, even if I use the, remember, I have, I test also on Macs, so I can, even with Macs, I can tell you, like, we're not seeing these improvements, right? But definitely on Windows, you can see why we cannot access the improvements, okay? Or at least we're not guaranteed to access the improvements. So you understand why this is such a weird thing to say, because it really just punches a hole through this argument that more pressure levels are better, at least on Windows. Like, most of you are not, especially if you're a Krita user and you're using Windows Ink, you're not getting it. Now, if you're using WinTab, because Nick asked earlier, I think it was Nick asked about WinTab versus Windows Ink. Guess what? With WinTab, you get all the pressure levels your tablet says you're getting. Okay? It doesn't do any of that weird scaling thing. Okay? You're getting it all. So I just want you to know, can you use all your pressure levels in Windows? Yes, if you're using WinTab. Okay? Okay, so got that. So I said, again, I say I struggle to get IAF readings. I just want to tell you why. below 3 gram force, I do struggle with it. And here's what the struggle looks like. I might measure this pen as having, and this is a sign of struggle. At 3 gram force, if I measure the pen over and over, I'll get readings like 3 gram force, 3.1 gram force, 2.9. Like it just hovers in that region very tightly. As the pen becomes, as the pen, like a Pro Pen 2, has a lower IAF, my readings stay higher than they should, and they're variable, right? Sometimes I'll get readings like 3 gram force. Sometimes I get readings like 1 gram force. Sometimes I'll get 0 gram force is triggering pressure. Like there's something that's not sensitive or correct enough about my equipment. So there's just a lot of noise below 3 gram force. Okay, that's why I never claim that I know the IAF of pens that have low IAF. If they're 3 grams force and above, I'm like, yeah, I know that. I'm consistent with it. But below that, I struggle. Now, Cube can do it, but he is just very good at this. I am not. And drawing tablet manufacturers, like XP Pen has a video where they show how they do it. They have like a special machine they built to do it, which is automated. Like it'll actually, and I've seen their number. They put their number on the YouTube video. You can actually see them at 2.5. Actually, you know what? I don't want to talk about something that's showing you. So let's show you. Give me a second. Well, MaxMad, what's also happening in Krita is that pressure smoothing is hiding these details. Like I've drawn with like 128 pressure levels, and when you turn on pressure smoothing, you really would not be able to tell most of the time. Maybe hardly ever. Let's see if I can find it. Give me a second. Let's see if I can find it. Yeah, I found it. Okay, here we go. Okay, I'm gonna put the link in the chat. This is a, why did I not get that? Copy. Paste. There we go. Okay, this is a video by XP Pen. Okay, and I'm going to turn off the volume because otherwise you're going to hear a bunch of it. So I'm going to just play it. We don't need to watch the video. I'm just going to scroll to where. Okay, so this is some kind of place where they're measuring things, and you can see these little devices here. Let me zoom in. You see this thing here? And then, so these are multiple of these measuring devices. It's actually not just this thing. It's this terminal with these buttons. So it looks like some real industrial stuff, right? Yeah, MaxMad, honestly, because I've tried so many pens over the years, I noticed I've noticed a difference. This is when there was just WinTab, by the way. Between 1,000, I think I noticed the difference between 256 to 1,000. Okay, definitely, I felt like that was an improvement. The truth is, everything above 1,000, I haven't noticed the difference. Now there are other things relating to pressure which I did notice, but I've never noticed new pressure levels making a difference after 1,000. Honestly, I've never noticed it. Maybe I believe some of you might, but I also believe a lot of you probably are the same way. And if you've used Krita on Windows with Windows Ink, you've been using 1,000 pressure levels for quite a while now. Okay, so again, it's gonna be confusing if she talks and I talk, so I'm just gonna tell you what she's doing. So she put the pen in this, and this, oh sorry, you can't see. Let me just rewind for a second. She's gonna put the pen in the holding part of the device, okay? And she pressed a button on the screen, okay? So notice this chart here, right? And this is actually a pressure response curve. On this part, here, let me do it this way. On the x-axis is the physical force, and on the y-axis is the logical, or essentially the logical pressure, the pressure level. So you can see, what does it say right here? I hope it's clear. 492.2. This looks is probably close. This is the max pressure because this is 8,191. That pressure level corresponds to 492.2, right? Which is probably where it maxes out right here. See, it just flat lines at the top, right? Now, what do you notice here? Again, pens are oversensitive at low pressure. You can see that right here. It's rising really fast. Then it tips over, okay? Here it's more of a, less of a soft curve, more of a little bit of a bend. But you can see this is really what happens, okay? So they measure this, and she clicks a button to start this measuring process. Now, look what it did. It's measuring, and this is another run. And you can see, I don't know if this is the same pen or not, but you can see there's actually variation in the measurement. It could be the different pen, it could be, just a different measuring. But you can see right here, they start at almost zero. They start at basically pressure level 0, meaning 1.2 gram force is giving them a pressure level of 0, meaning this is under the IAF, okay? And this machine seems to be sort of going up and down a little bit. But even, 1.2, 0.9, it's all returning 0, meaning no pressure. So below the IAF threshold. Now, it's increasing the pressure. You can see this number is increasing. Now, now watch what happens. Now it's storing the numbers and she's scrolling. You can't see it. Oh, they're right there. What is she showing you? At 2.8 gram force, it's registering a pressure of 159 out of 8,000. Okay? So what does this tell you? The IAF is right around 2.8. Okay? And it's measuring multiple times, right? You can see it's building up this curve, okay? So we have a lot of belief, at least I do, that XP Pen their pens really do have a gram force of around 3 gram force for their newer pens. And and there'll always be a little bit of variation. We'll talk about that later. My equipment is not this precise. I wish it was. I'd love to have this device or build it, right? So this is how they do it. Now, I assume Wacom and Huion do the same thing. Okay, so this is IAF testing on the X3 Smart Chip pen. Okay. Okay. Now, the other thing that I want to share is, and this happens all the time, I'm guilty of it. I think we've all said something like this, which is, you will hear people say or see people write, and I've done this, but I try to correct myself when I do it. We have a natural temptation to talk about IAF as if it's a characteristic of the brand, okay? That's not entirely untrue, but it's also definitely not absolutely true, okay? Here's what I have found. Wacom Pro pens for the last, 20 years or whatever. Wacom professional pens, Pro Pen 2, Pro Pen 3, are the gold standard. Okay? Wacom professional pens consistently, unit to unit, have the lowest IAF in the industry. Cube measures them at less than 1 gram force. Okay? Now, if you look at a very old Wacom pen, that's a professional pen, you might see a difference, but anything in like the recent decades has been less than 1 gram force. Now, okay. Now, second point, non-Wacom brands are catching up. Okay, historically means before, let's just say 2021, maybe before 2020. Non-Wacom brands had higher IAF. Higher IAF means 5 gram force, 8 gram force, 12 gram force. You would really notice how hard you're pressing. But these days, the non-Wacom brands, for their professional pens, even for their consumer pens, they are really catching up. They are around, you saw the evidence with your own eyes with that XP Pen video. They are getting to around 2 to 3 gram force, okay? Which is very good. I personally am very okay with 3 gram force, but some of you will not be, okay? Now, let me show you a diagram here. Let's see, MaxMat says, I have weighed my Wacom Pro Pen 2 and it weighs 16 grams. If the IAF would be 13 or even 5 grams, the weight of the pen should be enough to have the minimum. Yeah. If you're just holding the pen, if you're letting the pen sort of drag, vertical on the surface, it'll be enough to trigger. Now holding it, doing that's not a great test of IAF, but it does tell you that, the IAF is less than the weight of the pen for sure. Okay, IAF. I think I have a diagram here I want to show you. Yeah. So there's a scale I have, which is just supposed to tell you what's good and bad in the world, okay? So the scale is here, but I have it as a table here. If a pen is less than 1 gram force IF, I consider that excellent. 1 to 2 would be great. 2 to 3.5 is very good, okay? Okay is 3.5 to 5, and bad is anything over 5, okay? Now this is my ranking. If you talk to Cube, he is much more strict about this. I believe he told me in one of our conversations, well, for him, things are bad if they're 3 gram force, okay? But I believe this scale covers most people. It definitely does not cover everybody. It doesn't cover Cube, and it doesn't cover people who are very sensitive to IF. I am not super sensitive to it, okay? I think I start noticing bad IF again at around 5 gram force, okay? So I want you to keep this in mind. And there's a video in this document. I'm going to copy this link and send it to you in the chat. Okay. So I just said something. Some people are going to need really low IF. Who are these people? Who are these people? I think there are 2 kinds of people who need really low IF. But you know what? Let me take a quick bio break. I'll be right back, okay? Okay, I am back. Let's see. One kind of people who need low IAF is the people coming from traditional art background. Yes. That is absolutely correct. People, let me just write that down, from traditional. Yeah, I think that's very true, Greg Littlefield. A lot of you who come from, the real world, who are drawing with pencils and pens and real paintbrushes, those devices are very sensitive, okay? And I have very often seen people who started doing digital, and they mentioned this. They mentioned that, hey, they try to draw really tiny strokes, and like it was so easy with their brush or pen, but with they're just finding they can't do that because they have to press much harder than they expect. Now, they might be able to adapt, but they definitely notice it. Some hate having to press harder. So if you come from a traditional art background, you're likely to be one of these people who find like you need really low IAF. Now, the other kind are people who, they didn't know this, like they didn't think about IAF, but they've been using a low IAF pen. Like they got a tablet years ago, could be a Wacom professional tablet, even could be some Wacom consumer tablets that have very low IAF in their pens. And they never talked about IAF. Wacom never talked about IAF. And so they have one of these, a great example is, maybe they have the old Intuos, Intuos 4 or something, right? That's a low IAF pen. The KP50, 501 or 503, I can't remember. It's a grip pen. And it has low IAF. They've been using it for years. And, who knows? Maybe their tablet broke or something. They want to get a non-Wacom tablet. Or they say, oh, I need to get a new Wacom tablet, but I'm going to get the new Wacom One tablet, which is much cheaper. They get it, and they're going to discover that that new pen has a much higher IAF, and they are going to hate it. If you're used to drawing with low IAF and suddenly use a pen with higher IAF, you'll notice it, and you'll notice how hard you're having to press. You will not enjoy the experience. Okay, so those are the two classes of people I find that they immediately notice they need the lower IAF, right? Now, it could be also that eventually you yourself, you start with a high IAF pen, you realize it feels like you're pressing down too hard, and you start developing this intuitive sense that, wow, I'm pressing down too hard. I want something lighter, right? So I'll just write that down as a third category. People who discover they are pressing down too hard strokes. Okay. And for some people, they can just wear their hands out. Now, this section was really, we started off about, non-Wacom brands catching up. But I wanted to emphasize, you should not be in the habit of saying Wacom means lower IAF or Huion means higher IAF. That's not a good way of thinking about this. The better way, the much more accurate and helpful way, is to look at specific pen models, okay? So for example, all right, let's take a look at some examples here. Wacom Pro Pen 2 has a very low IAF of less than 1 gram force, okay? This number is from Cube. Huion PW600 series is very good. It's 2 gram force, okay? But take a look at this. The Wacom, this is the Wacom One pen, model number CP913. In my measurements, I see it having like a 5 gram force, maybe 8 gram force. Huge difference, okay? And it varies by unit, which I'll talk about a little bit later. So first of all, don't do it by brand. Do it by the specific model of pen, okay? That's a much better starting point. So Pro Pen 2, we've measured it. We've measured multiple units. We know what it's like. Wacom 1 pen, we know. We've measured multiple units, say with PW600 series. So look at the pen model, not just the brand. Now this gets a little more complicated. The IAF varies. So if you have a pen, let's say you have 3 pens and they're the same model pen, the different units of the same model. There's variance. Okay, so for example, some pens, they can be like plus or minus 0.5 gram force, maybe less, right? I've measured pens like that. So if you see if someone says IAF equals 3 gram force, you might see, one unit might have, 2.5 gram force, or 2.8 gram force, or 3.2 gram force. So they dance a little bit around the number, right? So I'm okay. Yeah, I'd like it everything was consistent. Lower is better, but if you're around, I think 0.5 gram force is a decent variance. But you will see some pens where they swing, like depending on the unit, right? Where, so for example, if it says the IEF is 5, or it's actually more accurately, IEF is 8, right? Like then you'll see like 5 gram force, or you might see 12 gram force. That happens, right? So there's variance, and some pens have more variance than others. How do you know? You're gonna have to ask somebody which pens have more variance. I can tell you to some degree. The Wacom 1 pen CP923 has a lot of variance. CP913 has a lot of variance. So you have to keep these things in mind. Now the Wacom Pro Pen 2 does not have a lot of variance. So if you get one, then it's probably gonna be very low. Now, there is one thing you should watch out for, right? Which is, let me just make sure I don't cover this later. Yeah, we'll cover it in a second. Now, this variance is important because if you ever need to replace your pen, well, you're gonna get a new unit. The new unit might actually have a slightly different IAF than your original pen. So most of the time you'll never notice this, but sometimes you will notice it. Sometimes you will really notice it. So sometimes a pen is just defective. Like you might get a Pro Pen 2, but suddenly the IAF is crazy high, like at 5 gram force. I'd consider that a defective pen, okay? It's just way abnormal, and you should just contact support and get it replaced, okay? Now, it'd be good if you could measure the IAF that you're getting, because like that will help you, but I know that is very difficult. Okay. Now, another thing that gets confused here, which matters, and it seems like a trivial thing. Sometimes people ask me why I bring this topic up, but it matters. Many people think that it is the tablet that senses pressure. That's not true at all. There's a pressure sensor in the pen. It is the pen hardware that measures pressure. The pen just tells the tablet what it is, okay? Therefore, IAF is a property of the pen, not the tablet, okay? Now, why this matters? Let's suppose you want to buy a new tablet. You want to upgrade. At least in your mind, you want a better tablet. Now, I've seen this happen. Someone will say, well, I have this existing tablet, and they buy the latest version, the new and improved version, okay? Now, if the new and improved version uses the same pen, well, you cannot reasonably, remember there's low variance, right? You can't expect a lower IAF. Because you're getting the same model pen, right? And sometimes these pens might vary. You might actually get a quite different experience, but you understand why you should never expect a different IAF with a new tablet if it has the old pen type, the old pen model, okay? So there are definitely compelling reasons to upgrade. You might want a bigger screen or buttons or, an eraser or something, but if the pen is the same model, you can only expect the IAF will be the same. So if you're going to buy a new tablet, verify the IAF of the pen, ask the manufacturer, and make sure it's at least as good as the pen you already have. Okay? Don't assume a newer pen is better. Find some data. And don't assume that the same model will somehow be better. Probably won't be better. Might even be worse. Even if just by a little bit. Now, another consequence of the fact that pens max mat, that's good to know that IAF is a feature within the pen. Not that, yeah, it's super critical. And this has so many other things. Trust me, there's multiple things in this session where I'm going to talk about why that matters. Now, because it's the pen that measures IAF and it's a physical hardware, you can't change, you can't change the pen through software. More specifically, like if you try to adjust the hardware of the pen, you're gonna break the pen. Okay? It's sensitive in there, so don't open your pen. Now, so if you have a pen that has a higher IAF, realistically, you cannot lower the IAF. You cannot. So think of that as the native IAF, right? Because in that phrase, native IAF, is about to become very important in a minute. You cannot make the native IAF lower than it is, right? You can't. I mean, you can rebuild a pen with different components, but you can't really alter it. It's not easy to alter. Michael says, give a man a Wacom and he will never know money in his life. No money in his life because of the IAF. You can affect the IAF through software, but you can never lower it through software. Okay? You can't lower it through hardware. Sorry. Oh, something, an eyelash fell into my eye, and now it's making me cry. Oh. Okay, give me a second. It's really irritating my eye. I'll be right back. Okay, I am back. It feels like there is something in my eye. I don't think it's out, but it's kind of slid up a different place. Hopefully it'll come out a bit later. You know how irritating it is to get an eyelash in your eye, right? You have all the info on your website also about curves. Yes, it's all on my website. Let me make sure everyone has the link to the website, the full site. I'll just paste it there. Paste. There we go. Okay. Now, like I said, you can't change the native hardware IAF. You can't do it. But you can influence how you perceive it, how it affects you. And there's really two ways you can do this. There are physical techniques, meaning how you use your hand, basically, and software. Okay? So let's start with the physical techniques. Guess what? When I talk about IAF and when I measure these IAFs, how are we measuring it? The pen is perfectly vertical. Okay? This is super important. Let me put my face here. Right? It's just like this. you saw my apparatus that holds the pen as close to vertical as possible. Now, what does that mean? That means all the force on the tip of the pen is going straight up. There's a pressure sensor right about here. It's a little tiny thing. You can't see it. But the nib is pressing eventually into that thing. And that's the thing that's sensing the pressure. So when the pen is perfectly vertical, all the force from the tip is going into the pressure sensor. In other words, the pen is the most sensitive like this, okay? You will only get that super low IAF when you have the pen perfectly vertical. Now let me ask you a question. Do you draw with your pen perfectly vertical every second? You don't do that, do you? In fact, you draw like this, don't you? Right? I'm sure sometimes you might do this occasionally, but you probably draw like this. It probably goes between, I don't know, I think that's 35 to 50 degrees. You might go around here, right? Sometimes you might even tilt it more, but typically you're right about here, aren't you? Because you're holding it like you would a pen. Now what happens when you tilt the pen? So this is a little bit of, I guess, I don't know, physics involved, right? Just basic physics tells you if you're pressing up, there's force coming up to the nib like this, where's the force going? Well, at an angle, yes, some of the force goes to the pressure sensor, but some is pushing the nib up into the side of the pen. In other words, the force that is actually happening at the tip, not all of it is going to the pressure sensors. A good amount of it is going into the body of the pen. The body of the pen is plastic, it doesn't sense anything. So what that means is the more you tilt, the less and less physical force from the tip is going to the pressure sensor, okay? Now I haven't done any specific measurements that show you this. I will one day. Because it's hard for me right now to measure things at a specific angle. But what this means is effectively, as you tilt the pen, the effective IAF is rising, okay? So I'm just making these numbers up, but I just understand the principle. If the IAF of this pen is 1 gram force, I'm just making up this number. If I'm tilting at 45 degrees, so the IAF means a minimum amount of force required to start drawing. If I'm tilting at 45 degrees, I probably am actually pressing down with 3 gram force or 4 gram force, right? So I want you to keep aware of that, right? If you want a more sensitive pen, don't tilt it, okay? So this is a physical technique, okay? More tilt increases your effective IAF. The hardware didn't change. It's just like how the pressure is being sent, transmitted into the pen. Now, another thing that happens, again, another physical technique is, and this can vary, but basically, if you're drawing, I've got a tablet right here. So here's a pen tablet. This is a Huion HS611, I believe. Yeah, HS611. So this also IAF is measured vertically. Guess what? It's also measured with a pen that isn't moving. When you're moving the pen, it affects how IAF is measured as well as how you perceive it. Okay. So let me give you an example. The nib is pointing this way, whichever direction this is, to my left, your right. If I move in the same direction the nib is pointing, right, the IAF feeling will be different than if I'm moving in a different direction. In other words, if the nib is pointing in this direction, but I'm moving the other direction, right, it will take less force to draw if you're moving this way than this way. At least that's been my experience. You might have a different experience. My point is the direction of motion affects how much pressure goes into the pressure sensor. And typically, you'll get more pressure if you're moving where the pen is pointing than if you're dragging. You can typically see this, like if you just if you lightly hold your pen, you'll notice that you'll draw a line going this way if you're just hanging it like this, but it won't if you're dragging the pen away, right? So that matters. So if you're looking for lower IAF, then try moving in the direction that the nib is pointing, the pen is pointing. At least experiment. See if you're seeing these effects. Another thing that, in a kind of an experience way, that I think does play a role is, let's see, we have a couple questions. Horu, oh, what a nice thing to say. Thank you so much. Okay, we need some brand new technology instead of this to fix all the inconsistencies. Well, the truth is the EMR tablets and pens are the best technology we have. I can't think of anything better, right? Actually, I agree with you, we need improvements. But I actually also kind of think that in a couple of years, all pens will have incredibly low IAF. There are things I would like them to be better at, less diagonal wobble, less pointer lag, some other things. Okay, so this is brain and hand. This is not about the pen or the hardware, okay? So I've got two tablets here. Oh, one is a pen display, which is glass on its surface, and then I have one which is plastic, okay? Try to hold both of these without dropping one of them, okay. So here's what I've discovered. Sometimes, this happens with the Samsung S Pen, but I'm gonna hold this pen first. I have noticed sometimes with the same pen, if I'm drawing on a pen tablet, screenless tablet, and I'm drawing on a tablet that has glass, it can feel like the one on glass is more sensitive, okay? Again, it's in my head, maybe. Might be some physical factors too, but that's something I feel that might be true, okay? Another thing that happens is, this is the Samsung S Pen. Now, its nibs are rubbery, okay? Not like the normal plastic nib, they're rubbery, they're soft. The Samsung S Pen feels like it has low, okay, this is one we don't know, but lots of people feel that the S Pen has a lower IAF on a Samsung device than a Wacom device. Now, that could be because of the texture of the surface, it could be because of other stuff's going on in the firmware or driver, I don't know. But lots of people report that the Samsung S Pen or the Wacom CP913 is just more sensitive on a Samsung device than a Wacom device. Sometimes I feel like I've experienced that myself, and sometimes not. So that's another thing that we don't really know what's going on, but we're trying to figure it out. Okay, now we get to pressure curves. Now, pressure curves really affect the overall response of the pen, but they have something to do with pressure, IAF, okay? So, let's show you. Pressure curves, first of all, can affect your IAF. They can affect your, they can give you an effective higher IAF. They cannot, and in some sense, they cannot lower the IAF beyond the hardware limits, but they can give you a higher IAF. But let's talk about a couple of cases here. So let's open up I'm going to open up Krita because this is actually often not possible in some driver UIs, but Krita can do this. Because different apps and UIs give you different ability to change pressure. Alligator, let's see. I've experienced that myself. UD-EMR pens have been very inconsistent for me. Yeah, they are. I've noticed the IAF and UD-EMR pens are very inconsistent. They're all high, but they're very they could be 5 gram force, they could be 12 gram force. It just depends. James, chasing sunrises. I'm so late, and this is subject. Oh, well, I'm glad you joined us, and I will be writing a doc explaining all of this, by the way. Because I know it can be a lot to sit through this video, because we've covered a lot of topics. Okay, Now we're talking about how pressure curves affect IAF, okay? So I'm gonna load up Krita, and let me get one of these. I'll use this Huion tablet here. Let's see. There's no particular reason I'm using this Huion tablet. It's just what was on my desk. Okay. Let's just make sure the thing is mapped correctly. I have the correct pen. PW, I think it's PW 100. Uh-oh. No, here we go. What? Oh, I didn't plug in the tablet. That's funny. There we go. Okay, hang on. Huion, gotta make sure I'm mapping it to the right monitor. MaxMad, the truth is that there's no generic EMR pens that have a low IAF. All generic EMR pens are these UD EMR pens, which are just like the Samsung S Pen or Wacom One pens. They all have high IF and they're very random. Some can be 5 gram force, some can be 12. Okay, let's do the working area mapping here. Okay, got it. So I'm in Krita, okay? And let's go and, come on, man. Let's see, why can't I draw here? Layer is locked. How did I lock? Oh, I see. There we go. We're drawing. Okay. Let's show you what I'm seeing so it's not confusing. Okay. So this is Krita. And let's go to the pressure curve for a brush. So I'm going to reset the pressure curve to control size only. And I can go to a linear pressure curve. Okay. Linear means it's straight up and down, and this is specifically what I call the null pressure curve because it's lower left is all the way in the corner, its upper right is all the way in the corner, okay? And let me move it away to another screen for a second. And remember, when you see a pressure curve like this, what is it doing? It's doing nothing, okay? And what you should also do, because there's multiple pressure curves, I'm gonna go to the tablet, the Huion driver, and let's confirm that there's no pressure, that there's a null pressure curve here too. Yeah, it's null, okay? So, I'm gonna keep the Huion driver open, but I'm gonna keep it open in another window, another monitor, okay? So, I'm just gonna draw for a second, just tell you what it's like, okay? Why don't I increase the size a little bit more so you can see what's happening? Okay, by the way, it feels pretty good. This is a very old tablet, by the way, but it's still actually, it's actually kind of okay. There's a little bit of pointer lag, but nice smooth strokes, actually. Now, if I had to guess, I would say this was a 3 gram force IAF, if I had to guess, okay? Now, can I increase my IAF? Yeah. Let's see if I can do that. You can in general. Let's see if I can do it with the driver. This is how you do it. You just got, it doesn't matter what the other things are. Like it doesn't matter what the yellow and the red are here. You got to move the lower left over to the right, okay? And I moved it really over to the right. And I'm going to draw and I'm going to tell you what it feels like. Okay? I'm pressing down. And I had to press, if I had to guess, I think I had to press down, I would say, with 20 gram force. Like, I am scraping it, I can hear it scraping, nothing's drawing. But I can draw if I press down with again, it's just a guess, 20 gram force, right? You can increase the IF of your, that's easy to do. You're telling the software, just ignore the lower pressure, okay? Now, let's go reset this. Can you decrease the IAF this way? No, you cannot. You cannot, okay? Like, it's not physically possible in the UI to drag the lower left to the left. And even if you could do that visually, it would have no impact, okay? Now, having said that, let's talk about there's a name for when you drag the lower left over like this, okay? So the distance between the corner of the graph and where this point is, that's called a dead zone. It means ignore that amount of pressure, okay? Now, some tablets actually, by default, they configure a dead zone for some of their pens. So when you get a tablet, you have to go take a look at the driver and see if there's a dead zone. If there's a dead zone, you can just drag it over, okay, and get your IF lower, okay. Wacom actually, for their Pro Pen 2, actually should have a dead zone, right? So if it's raised, you can lower it, but you can't lower it beyond the minimum. And dead zones, you might say, why would you ever want a higher IAF? It's actually useful. Sometimes when you get a low IAF pen, let me see if I can do it. You see this little thing here, this little tail? Right? It's this little tail, you might not want that, okay? And if you increase the IAF, you'll cut that tail off, okay? So sometimes it's actually useful. You see, it's not, I can't quite do it, right? Usually when you flick it, sometimes it's working, but it's harder to do, okay? It's only happening sometimes now. Now, if I really change the IAF, here's what I'm doing. The lower left is much more over here. Again, it doesn't completely eliminate, but it does control it to some degree. Now, sometimes pens are too sensitive. It almost seems like the nib is kind of stuck in the pressure sensor a little bit. You might get a real wispy tail, and in that case, you can change the IAF. Another use of this technique is if your pen is ever drawing while hovering, that's another technique you can use to increase, like somehow your pen is damaged and it's reporting pressure where it doesn't have it. You can try seeing if you can increase the IAF to get rid of that feature. Well, that behavior. Okay, let me get back to Word here. We talked about dead zones. Okay, there's one thing I want to tell you about, which is the effect of multiple pressure curves. So I showed you there's a pressure curve in Krita, and there's a pressure curve here in the driver. In fact, Krita has two pressure curves. There's a global pressure curve, which I'll show you in a second. Here you go. There's a global pressure curve in Krita. There's the brush pressure curve behind it, and then we have the driver pressure curve. So the question is, which pressure curves are applied? And the answer is all of them are applied. Okay, so let's try increasing the IAF for all of them, okay, and see what happens. Okay. Let's get to settings, configure Krita. So all of them now, I'm saying increase the IAF, okay? Let's see what happens. Okay, I really had to press down a bit harder to get to draw, right? They're all being applied. I've done various tests with Clip 2 Paint and Krita. All the pressure curves are applied. So generally what I recommend you doing is, this is the simplest recommendation. Keep the driver like this. In Krita, the global pressure curve, keep it, reset it to like this, okay? Just change the pressure curve of the brush, okay? So don't curve everything or whatever. This is kind of advice that has to do with more than IF, but generally try to use one pressure curve, not three, because one is being applied after the other, and like, it's really hard to debug pressure curve problems if all of them are set to something weird. Huru, that's a very common technique. Lots of people lower the max IAF, lower the maximum physical pressure. It's a very common technique. For example, some walk-on pens have a really high maximum pressure of like 900 gram force. Lots of people cannot hit that high, or it's irritating to do that. So they do it lower. So what he's talking about, folks, is he changes this value. That will decrease the maximum pressure, this movement here, okay? Sure, California inking, I will happily talk about that. So, let me go back to my, to understand this, let me go back to my, how I measure pressure, okay? So I want you to see the equipment. So what happens is I put the tablet here and I put the pen here and I'm seeing how hard I'm pressing on the tablet. And then in the application, I'm opening up the Krita tablet tester, okay? So pretend the scale is underneath the tablet. I'm pressing here, and you can see it says P equals 62.9%. So I know that 282 gram force equals 62%, okay? So what I do is I collect this data, and the data looks like this. Let me just show you for the Pro Pen 3. If you try different pressures and take a look what the tablet tester says, you develop what I call a pressure curve and a pressure response curve, which is how does the pen actually respond to pressure? This is pretty typical. This is the Wacom Pro Pen 3. So the IAF is somewhere around here, and you can see if I press it around 50 gram force, that is about 40% pressure. But to get to the max pressure, it's somewhere around 600 gram force to 700. So this is the actual behavior of the pen, okay? What the pressure curves do is they modify this behavior. So for example, let me get a different pen here, not so thick, okay? So this is going to be the pressure response. Pressure response means what's the hardware of the pen doing, okay? So it's a graph relating physical pressure to logical pressure, okay? So most pens have a response that looks like this, okay? Actually, let me draw it slightly differently because I want to, let me draw a thing here. I want 3 of these here. Yeah. And do I have an eraser somewhere? Oh. I do not like the way Krita does erasers. Okay. So this is the pressure response, meaning how the pen behaves with regard to pressure. And I don't need it to be so thick. So typically it'll look like this. Let me pick a different color for this. I'm going to do it in blue, okay? I'll make a thicker line here. Okay, so that means the pen's behavior. Pressure, physical pressure to logical pressure. Now, let's talk about the curve. Okay, now what gets confusing is they're both curves, but one is how this is not a curve of, pressure curves are not how the pen behaves. It's a transformation of how the pen behaves, okay? So let's consider a couple of cases. Let's try this, okay? Now, this is the pressure curve, which is a transformation, not a description of behavior, right? So this is a transform, okay? And then this is the, so basically this will reshape this behavior, okay? So this is the effective, or the processed. So yeah, pressure curve is a one way of processing pressure data. Remember, it does not tell you how the pen's behaving. It tells you how to modify pressure response. I misspelled this response, okay? So what does this do? This doesn't do anything. This doesn't change how the pen's behaving, okay, at all. Whatever's on the left will be whatever's on the right, okay? Hey, Greg Littlefield, I agree 100%. Okay? Now, let's try something, and I don't know why people, so before I do this, I want you to go to the left here and think about what this curve means. This means, this part right here, right? Most pens are oversensitive at low pressure. It's hard to control pressure, and I'll show you examples of that. And they're meaning small changes in physical pressure here change what the computer thinks the pressure is dramatically. Your pen is very unstable in some sense when it's reported, very noisy. Less noisy as you press harder and harder. So if you set your pressure curve to do this, you're not changing that behavior. Now let me show you an example of what that means. Okay. So, I'm going to make this much more obvious with a really thick brush, okay? And let's just make sure there's nothing happening here with the pressure curve. Okay, there's nothing happening. So nothing's happening. I'm going to draw super light, meaning low pressure, okay? Do you notice anything? Well, with this pen, doesn't really exhibit a lot of problems. Okay, so I'm gonna have to induce. There's a little bit of pressure. That looks a little ugly, right? Forget the position. Just think about how much pressure is going up and down suddenly, right? If I press really light, let me make this even bigger, like a magnifying glass. Okay. It looks a little ugly, but actually, the more sensitive a pen, this pen doesn't have a low IAF. If you take a look at, let me show this to you. This is what happens with the best pen on the market, what I'm about to show you. Pro pen, sorry, it's called low pressure. Yeah, with most pens by default, this is what the Wacom Pro pen looks like at low pressure. You get a bunch of these dots and weird transit, it looks awful. This is the best pen on the market, okay? It's super sensitive at low pressure. It's got a low IAF and it's overreacting to small changes. So what I recommend people do in this case is this. I gotta do some erasing. Let's see. I recommend you do this. Okay? You can do a little bit of it, you can do a lot of it. Just try it. Find what works for you. What will that do? That will change the behavior of the pen to be more like this. More linear. I'm not saying linear is good. Well, what I am saying is that your pen is not overreacting at low pressure. So if you want more control, try doing this, okay, with your pressure curve. Does that make sense? Now, what happens if you do the opposite of my advice? Some people do this. I don't know why they do it, because they don't. It's really produces weird results, but some people say it works better for them. They do this with the pressure curves. They're thinking, I need my pen to be more sensitive. Well, you are making your pen more sensitive, but what does this do to this? It kind of multiplies it, and you end up with this. It's super crazy, overreactive, meaning you have a hard time handling pressure here. So I recommend the other way. Tilt it down, across and then up, not up and then across, okay? Does that help, California inking? This is what I recommend for most people. Let me go back for a second. And draw it so everyone sees it the way I intended. I generally recommend people use curves like this, okay? That I think works out for way more people than, or just leave it alone, right? But whatever you do, honestly, just play with what works for you, okay? Now, you also have a question here about the middle pressure. I don't think the middle pressure corresponds to anything that would help us right now. There is a use for the middle pressure, but it's more of a way of figuring out how to, it's more complicated. I don't want to get into this video because I need to show a demo and I'm not prepared to show the demo. Hi Grumple, thanks for joining us. So yeah, try this for your pressure curves. That is my feedback. I'm glad to hear that, California inking. Most important thing is, I would say, if you're not using pressure curve, okay, let me say it this way. Here's a surprise. By default, the pens are configured to not draw good for you. The driver is not helping you. The apps aren't helping you. You're getting a worse experience if you just accept all the defaults. It is in your best, so what I want you to do, the benefit is, I want you to make pressure work for you. Make pressure work for you. And the way you do that is by using, there are many techniques, but the key one is use a pressure curve. Play with it. You see what you can do. You can increase the IAF, you can decrease the maximum pressure, you can reshape the performance of the pen to fit how you want to draw. And you can change it by brush. Remember, some brushes you want a slightly different curve than others. Play around with it. But don't accept the defaults, because the defaults are usually producing strokes that, while you might not think are bad, if you change it a little bit, the strokes would be easier for you. They'd work more like you'd expect if you just commit a little bit of time, okay? Oh, does that make sense? Make the pressure work for you. Don't accept the defaults. Okay. Technically, I got a little off topic because we're really, this is really a conversation about IAF, not pressure, but I think you get my idea. Okay, actually, we got through everything, right? So, again, this was a conversation about IAF, what I know about it. There's still lots of mysteries, okay? There's still lots of mysteries. But what I'd like you to do, and I will take this transcript of this video and create a doc, create another video, because I've been going on now for almost 2.5 hours. I will write up a doc. No, it's California inking. It wasn't a derail. It wasn't a derail. It was a good question, and this is what we want to do. We want to get this information out that we want people to ask and start thinking, right? And I'll do the same thing. I'll update my pressure curve documentation as well. So IAF is a topic that I hope you've watched this video, and I hope it's given you some insight into IAF. And it is not a simple topic, is it? Right? It is not simple at all. There's so many things that affect it. Pressure curves affect it. The tilt affects it. There's variation in the pens. Their different pen models have different IAFs. We have a lack of data. I mean, I'm not good at measuring IAF. Cube is really good at it. What I want you to do is play around with pressure curves, especially, for IAF and other reasons. And I want you to find tweak the IAF with the pressure curve to find what works good for you for your specific drawing scenario and specific pen and specific brush. And then I hope as every year there are new people entering digital art, and they don't know any of what we're talking about. It's all and if we don't talk about it, they're never going to know. So what I'm relying on you, the audience, to do is take some of this knowledge. You don't have to give me any credit, but take the knowledge and at the very least have the discussion with people. If you see them using a pressure curve, ask them, what problem did that solve for you? If you see them not using a pressure curve, maybe encourage them to start experimenting with it. If you see them saying, well, I'm having to press down too hard, some reasons why that might be. If you see them, and you might be able to help them tweak their technique or their settings to work better. If you see someone trying to upgrade, and they're like, oh, I'm going to get a new tablet, and you ask them, which pen comes with the tablet? And they're like, oh, it's the same pen I currently have. Well, the pressure's not going to be any different, really, right? So, I've armed you with some knowledge, and now you can help people in addition to maybe improving some of the things you yourself are doing, okay? So, yeah, that was everything I know about IAF. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll stay on for a little bit if people have any questions. But I'm really curious to take the transcript of this and, make a more condensed video, and one that people can watch a bit faster. And I'll make a doc as well. So let's see the questions. Yeah, never worry about derailing California King. This is how we learn as a community, is we ask questions about how this all works, right? We ask questions. Oh, wow. I'm so glad I started streaming. This was a really fun, energetic session for me. But I am worn out now. So let's take a look if there's any questions. I don't see any. Let's see if there's anything, just to take a quick peek at Reddit to see if there's anything that people are talking about. This all began from a Reddit thread after all. Someone has the auto mod has deleted things, so in a Reddit post I'll fix it. Okay, let's see. Let's see. Okay, I don't see any additional questions, so rather than keeping on waiting, I'm going to wrap it up for this session. Thank you, Max Matt. I do appreciate it. And if you have more feedback or questions, just put it in the comments or join the Discord. Let me make sure everyone has the Discord link again. It's in there. Everyone, as always, thank you for a great time. This was a super energetic session. Very enlightening for me. And just what a great way to start my day, talk about drawing tablets. Everyone, I'll see you soon. Have a great day or night. And thanks so much for joining me today.